How's it going, Yankee fans? My name is Alex, my co-host here, Ryan Garcia, and today I want to take a look at a Japanese star player that the Yankees cannot miss on. Every year, there seems to be one of those Japanese players that makes the transition over to the MLB and, is just a phenomenal athlete, a phenomenal player. And I think that last year was Saya Suzuki, definitely had some, I guess, shortcomings trying to adjust to the MLB game with the Chicago Cubs, but nonetheless, put together a decent season. He obviously has a lot of slugging potential, but this new guy that we're bringing up here, Masataka Yoshida, is a very intriguing player for the Yankees, let alone the entire MLB. Now, there are other teams I think he may prefer. I think the Phillies were a team that he may have wanted to go to, but we'll see if the Buffaloes actually are willing to let him go in the first place. This is a really talented individual. He looks a lot like the swing style. He's a lefty, really has that kind of Ichiro style to him. But he's got some underrated power, and he's a phenomenal elite level contact hitter. Some of the Yankees obviously could use during the postseason, during the regular season. And he's a really good outfielder as well. So this is definitely an intriguing athlete, intriguing player the Yankees may want to take a shot on. Ryan has a lot of in-depth analytics on this player specifically and how talented he is and why the Yankees should make a strong push for his services. But Ryan, before we dive into Masataka Yoshida, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. The Yankees, as you mentioned, were a team that really did struggle with making contact in the postseason. And while we can say that, it's not just one player that'll make a big difference, we've seen that in the postseason. Sometimes all it takes is one player kind of playing hero ball and having a great postseason for them to go on and advance. I mean, look at Jeremy Pena, what he's done for the Houston Astros. So, having as many talented players that are equipped to, do well in the postseason as possible tends to fare well for you. Even the Phillies, look at them. I mean, without Bryce Harper, where would they be? Sometimes all it takes is just one. And for Masataka Yoshida, as you mentioned, it's the elite contact skills and the great plate discipline. Has had a 5.1 swinging strike rate to kind of compare to Seiya Suzuki, who was someone who I believe was more hyped than Yoshida was considered a better player than Yoshida was because he had better defensive value and also a little more of that power upside. But he ran a swinging strike rate, about 2.3% lower than Suzuki's, had a higher hard hit rate by 2%, 46% versus 44%. And then the zone contact rate was over 92%. So, when they're throwing pitches in the zone, Yoshida is not swinging and missing at them at a rate higher than 8%, which is ridiculous to think about. Because, I know a lot of people are going to point out the lower velocities in the NPB, which that is true, right? Pitchers are not as good. The stuff is definitely worse in that league. It's a kind of a balance between AAA and Major League Baseball if you wanted to kind of scale it to Major League Baseball competition. And that's only really because, Major League Baseball can pull guys from the NPB, can pull guys from, international free agents or from different parts of the globe. So they tend to kind of get more global level talent. And if you look at Yoshida power wise, right, I mentioned the high hard hit rate, this is a guy who he's a very complete player, and he didn't get a lot of fastballs. He actually got, I believe, one of the 10 lowest fastball rates in the NPB because pitchers recognize, teams recognize this was a guy who you want to be throwing as much off speed to, and he still adjusted very well. Over 60% of the pitches he faced were not four-seam fastballs, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a huge amount of pitches that are, generating a lot of movement and are tough to hit and tend to post, tend to generate worse numbers against. You look at sinkers or cutters or sliders or curveball splitters, changeups. Those are pitches that just tend to have lower batting averages or lower WOBAs against than a four-seam fastball. And so that's really encouraging there, where you see a guy who's handling off-speed pitches, who's handling, a variety of different types of fastballs in terms of sinkers and cutters, and has adjusted very well to them. He's 29. He's going to be right in the middle of his prime, his best years. And the elite contact skills, the elite OBP, this is a guy who walked almost twice as much as he struck out, a 1.95 walk to strikeout rate. He was by far the best player in the NPB in that regard. And his 201 WRC plus, I mean, for context, guys, Judge's historical season, his WRC plus was over 200. The only player to do it since Barry Bonds did it way back when he was juicing back in the early 2000s. So, this is a guy who's putting up remarkable offensive numbers. And if he translates to the major league level and strikes out, his strikeout rate doubles out of nowhere, he's still striking out under 20% of the time, right? So, it's ridiculous to think about because I know that a lot of people are still going to have their doubts. But if we kind of compare it to Fangraphs Fangraphs tools. Fangraphs has him as a 70 grade hit tool. It's on a 20/80 scale, so that means he's just a tick below being the elite of the elite, the best of the best. I want to make people understand, Yoshida is a professional baseball player playing at a professional level, at the highest level that Japan can offer. This is a guy who's, I think, has one of the best hit tools in the entire world, right? You don't just get a 70 grade hit tool to get a 70 grade hit tool. There are very few players who would get that type of grade. So for the Yankees, if they want to improve their swinging strike rate, if they want to have a guy at the top of the lineup left-handed who can give them great contact skills and some pretty good power, Yoshida, you can't miss on him, right? I know that's what the title says, but I really don't think a team like the Yankees can afford to miss out on a guy like Yoshida.
Yeah, you know what? I love these contact hitting lefties that come out of Japan. They just churn these guys out, and they're so freaking talented. The Yankees, we've had a lot of success. With obviously Tanaka. You look at, Suzuki obviously played for the Yankees for a little bit. Matsui. There's so much great talent that comes out of Japan, and every now and then you got to just take a swing on one of them, and they pan out. These lefties specifically, the elite contact hitting, and this guy hits it. I don't know how old he is, but he hits it all over the field. Dude, how old is Masataka? Do you know?
He's 29.
Okay, so he's 29 years old. He's in the prime of his game, right? And these guys, I feel like, last forever. Ichiro, I feel like, played until he was 70 years old. And it's really cool to see how much of an impact some of these guys can come over and make. But the elite contact from the lefty side of the plate, you even look at Stephen Kwan. He's got a good look at him against the Guardians. This style he uses has a very Japanese-esque kind of relevance. And you see the way he pulls the ball. You see the way he's just looking to make good contact. And these guys get on base a lot because of that. They're really, really fast, really athletic, really smart, high IQ players. Taking a swing on one of these guys makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. I think you made a pretty good argument in the sense that, he could make a big impact at the MLB level. Now, you did compare in your article, if you're not aware, Ryan wrote a phenomenal article about this player specifically and a really, really in-depth breakdown about how he could translate to the MLB level. He compares, the Japanese league to AAA, essentially, right? So you're looking at like a guy with his numbers at the AAA. There's a really strong argument that he should be at the MLB level. And in fact, that's the only argument. The numbers are so good. So, in my opinion, if the Yankees don't look at him, I feel like it would be malpractice. I think you suggested $15 million per season, as the year-over-year average, so a little bit less than Suzuki is getting, but. $15 million, I think that was in line with Andrew Benintendi. But I'll ask you this, Ryan. Why would you go for a guy like Yoshida over Benintendi? They profile as similar players in terms of elite contact hitting, but what makes Yoshida a little bit more exciting? Because, Benintendi's done it at the pro level. He's done it at the MLB level for years. So, why would you take the risk on Yoshida over Benintendi for a similar price point?
Yeah, so that is a great point. There is risk involved here, right? Where it's like if you're calling up a prospect almost. It's like if the Yankees handed the reins to a guy like Anthony Volpe to start the season at shortstop. The talent is there, but there is some inherent risk where this is a player who hasn't played at that level, and there's going to be an adjustment period. However, I will say, I think Yoshida's hit tools a little bit better. Not to knock Benintendi, but if you look, it's just you'll never. Even at the AAA level, you rarely see guys nearly double their strikeout rate in their walk rate. You know what I mean? That's just, you just don't see it, right? It doesn't really happen. This is not a common occurrence. And so there's that factor to it. And then I think the power upside for Yoshida, he ran a 46% hard hit rate. I want people to understand, that was one of the highest marks in the Nippon Baseball League. This isn't the guy who was like, we mentioned Stephen Kwan, and not to say that if you don't hit the ball hard, you're not good. But hitting the ball hard tends to lead to some pretty good results. So, he was top 5 in hard hit rate in the Nippon Baseball League, right? So you're combining that with great contact skills. He's not sacrificing power for contact, right? You'll notice a lot of guys in Nippon Baseball League who may run lower swinging strike rates. There are a few guys ahead of him who were slugging under 300. You know what I mean? We're looking at like 290 slugging percentages. Those are putrid, right? But those guys are there to make contact, right? Yoshida has figured out a way to still generate a good amount of power. He had 21 home runs in about 120 games. That's pretty good power right there. And you think about moving him, to Yankee Stadium, that right field's going to be pretty favorable to him. Very favorable. Yeah. So, I look at a guy like Yoshida and say, okay, where do I have like a benchmark, like a median kind of what's his most likely outcome offensively for 2023? I would say a 115 to 120 OPS plus is somewhere around that range. And that's better than Benintendi's career OPS plus, right? I know Benintendi kind of sat around that range, but it was a career year for Benintendi. You know what I mean? A year where you're like, wow, this is one of his better seasons. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, I can't sit here and say that Benintendi's most likely outcome is better than Yoshida's most likely outcome. And then the upside for Yoshida, like we mentioned, the context skills, I think those will translate. What if the power translates? What if the hard hit rates just seamlessly translate? What if he's rocking a 43, 44, 45% hard hit rate and, hits 20 home runs? It looked like Benintendi had to sacrifice power to go out and put up those type of low strikeout rates and high average. It doesn't seem like Yoshida has to do that. He hit 335 while taking monster hacks. I mean, if you look at the swings, as you mentioned, they're very, very, he has great bat control, 80 grade bat control. Like 80 grade means the best of the best, right? When you have 80 grade bat control with good power, again, you just need if you just pull the ball in Yankee Stadium in the air, you're going to hit 20 plus home runs. So I think the upside is just higher. I think that Yoshida doesn't have to change his hard hit profiles to generate contact. I don't think he's going to have a 46% hard hit rate at the major league level, but I do think it's still going to be above major league average, and he's probably going to be in contention for a batting title. So, and also he walks a lot. So in contention for a batting title, great walk rate, you're probably going to be in contention for the OBP crown as well. And I look at that and I say, I just don't know if Benintendi's ceiling is any of those things. And I don't know if his most likely outcome, his median outcome, what you typically see from Andrew Benintendi, is going to be better than what Yoshida's giving you. So I'm paying for better upside. I'm paying for what I think is slightly better median outcomes for Yoshida. And while there is that risk that he doesn't pan out, I want to point to other guys who have been panned out at the major level from the NPB in the recent years. Yoshi Tsugo and Shogo Akiyama, both of them didn't pan out, but those were older guys. Those are both guys who had either whiff concerns. In Tsugo's case, he struck out 25.3% of the time his last year in the NPB. Or in Akiyama's case, he had a hard hit rate well under 40%. So, there were concerns on both ends about and those ended up being their issues. Tsugo had a bad whiff problem at the major league level, and Akiyama could not slug at the major league level. So I feel like in terms of covering your flaws, the flaws that you may feel like are going to get exposed to major league level, I feel like he just does them all so well. And even if you mentioned Suzuki, where he had his ups and downs, Seiya Suzuki, I'm referring to, he still put up a 116 WRC plus. If the Yankees get a 116 WRC plus from Yoshida yet next year, they'll be pretty happy, especially considering how he gets to that point. And especially seeing that I think it's going to be a number that goes up as the season progresses. And that'll be a good trend for October. In October, you see a lot of swings and misses. And I think Yoshida's going to be able to cut down on those and help the Yankees out in a big way.
Absolutely. I mean, look, sometimes you got to take a risk, and ultimately this guy is worthwhile. And I'll ask you this. I don't know if we touched on it, but how is his defense? I'm not sure about his defense. Is it good stuff? Where does he usually play?
Yeah, so he's an outfielder. His defense, it's not great. It's very much meh. He's very much a meh defensive player. And in left field, that's where you typically get a lot of meh defense. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to go out and win a Gold Glove. But I will say that, in spite of that meh defensive value, I still think that you're still getting what you paid for and you're still getting the value you want, because ultimately I don't think Benintendi was necessarily killing it out there. I know he got a Gold Glove nominee, but I don't think he was necessarily an elite defensive left fielder. And Cabrera also had his moments in left field where he didn't look great. So it's not like you're taking a step back defensively. I know that's a big thing for the Yankees, but they don't really want to necessarily take steps back defensively. I think that's becoming a part of their identity, being a great defensive team. And while Yoshida doesn't make them better defensively in left field, I don't think he makes them much worse, while I also think he makes them better in terms of their offensive profile and what they're trying to have in front of a guy like Aaron Judge, who I'm going to just hope the Yankees bring back. But having Yoshida hit in front of a guy like Judge, I mean, great contact, left-handed, great OBP. Pitcher's probably throwing 5 or 6 pitches minimum when they face him. And then having to face Judge, that's a tough predicament for pitchers.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So I'm curious to see if the Yankees do actually go after him if he gets posted by Buffalo, or the Buffaloes. So interesting player. Definitely one to keep an eye on if you're a Yankee fan and, you really want an elite contact hitter that's got some good pop to his bat as well. So, we'll keep you guys updated on any interest if the Yankees do have and any rumors that do come out regarding his posting and if he becomes available for MLB teams to sign. But guys, let's hear your perspectives below on Masataka Yoshida. Really intriguing player. Ryan rattled off a lot of good information for you. So I'd love to hear your perspectives in the YouTube comments as always. Make sure to like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.